This video is focusing on multiplication, and so we want to give a quick definition and go back to the basics of what is multiplication. So multiplication is just a repeated addition. If we're adding the same number over and over and over and over again, instead of having to do that so many times, we can make it a lot shorter and use the operation of multiplication. So my simple example down here is, instead of writing 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 7 different times, we can just say 5 times 7, and we'll get to the same answer. So if you were to add up the number 5 7 distinct times and just keep adding, you would get to 35. And if you were to do 5 times 7, we also know that that is 35. So it's going to save us a lot of time. And you might say, okay, well, in this case, what's the difference? Well, if I said, what is, 5 times 307, you would have to write the number 5 307 times, and that kind of where it gets a little crazy. So multiplication saves us a lot of time, so we don't have to write a number 307 times. Okay, so again, just keep in the back of your mind the definition of what multiplication is. So if you're ever stuck on a type of problem, you can always revert back to addition and do things the old-fashioned way if it's reasonable to do that. Okay, so here's my first important piece of information about multiplication, and that is that it's going to be very important that you memorize and know the multiplication facts at least through 9 times 9. So typically when you learn them the first time through, you're asked to memorize through 12 times 12, which is good to know, definitely something that you want to have be able to do. But 9 times 9 is the minimum, because when we're multiplying larger numbers, we're going to be multiplying single-digit numbers like 0 through 9. So knowing those is going to be important. So if you have any issues with, for example, remembering that 9 times 8 is 72, or that 7 times 6 is 42, those are things that you're going to want to go back and learn, and there's going to be some stuff provided to you to practice that. And just get it in your mind, because you probably haven't had to access that so much using calculators. Okay, so again, just keeping that in mind, that we need to know our just the math facts up through 9. We're going to go through and do a problem. Okay, so we're going to just multiply 27 times 4, and the directions say find the product. And so your quick reminder about that vocabulary word product is that a product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So now we have 3 keywords to keep in mind, and we'll get a 4th next time, or in a couple videos. So we have sum means addition, difference means subtraction, now we have product means multiplication. So we want to keep those in mind too, so if they ever show up in like a word problem or something, you know what to do. Okay, so when we're doing multiplication, it can be a little bit more complicated than just adding or subtracting down columns. We're actually going to go and take this digit 4, and we're going to multiply it by both of these. So we're going to start off, let's do one and see what happens. So we're going to say 4 times 7 is 28. Okay, so I'm going to take the last digit, the ones place, and I'm going to place it right here below the ones place. So there's the 8 from, right, 7 times 4 was 28. Okay, and I took that ones digit, this one, and I placed it in its space. And then we're going to carry up the 2. Okay, so there's the rest of 28. And then I'm going to multiply again. 4 times 2 is 8 plus this 2. Right, so I have 8 in the 10 spot, plus 2 more is 10. So that's going to make my number turn into 10, which I'm going to place right here, and I'm done. So 27 times 4 is 108. So that's pretty straightforward. It's not a lot going on. You're going to see that things get a little bit more complex once we start adding in more digits. But that's the basic concept. We're going to take every place value in the bottom number, multiply it by each of the ones above it, okay, and then carry when necessary to get our digit. Okay, so let's do the same thing, but with a little bit more complicated of a problem. Okay, so 394 times 86. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start with the 6. Okay, so let me grab my highlighter. So we're focusing on the 6. We're going to start just right here. We're going to forget about the 8 for a second. Okay, doesn't want to color for me. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to say 6 times 4 is 24. So I'm going to start on the right-hand side and multiply this 6 by each of these values, carrying when I need to. So we're going to have to carry a lot. 6 times 4 is 24. I'm going to place the 4 down here, and the 10s place, the 2 goes up top. Okay. 9 times 6, right? So now I'm just going to keep going. The 6, I'm going to move to the next spot over. 6 times 9. 9 times 6 is 54. 54 plus 2 more. Okay, 54 plus 2 more is 56. So I'm going to place the 6 down here and carry up the 5. Okay, so there's my 56. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing again. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 plus 5 more is 23, and since I'm at the end of the number, I can just write the 23. Okay, so 6 times this whole big number, 394, is 2,364. Good, done. Okay, so now here's where it gets a little bit trickier. Okay, so now we're going to focus, and I'm going to get rid of these things that I carried too because we're moving on to a different number. Okay, so now we're going to focus instead on the 8. Okay, so when I look at the 8, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to multiply the 8 by each of these values here, right? I'm going to multiply it by the 4 and by the 9 and by the 3. Here's the catch, though. So let's do the first one. 8 times 4 is 32, okay? Here's the catch. When I have my number 32, this 2 is not going to go below the 4. It's going to start where your place value is. So since I'm in the tens column, I'm going to place the 2, the answer to this, below that. And I'm going to say 2, carry a 3. Okay, oops, sorry, I carried it to the wrong place. 2, carry a 3, right? So I did 8 times 4 is 32, okay, and I brought the 2 down, and then the 3 goes above the next place. 9 times 8 is 72. 72 plus 3 is 75. Okay, carry a 7, so I put the 5 down, and then I carried the 7. And then 8 times 3 is 24. 24 plus 7 is 31. So it's going to look like that. Okay. So if you notice, everything got pushed off one place value, and that's because the 8, remember, actually doesn't represent the same thing as a 6. This represents 6 1s, and this represents 8 10s, right? So because it represents 10s, we want that value to start in the 10s column and move over from there. Okay. So that's why we move it over. Okay. So now I have all of these numbers down here, and it's like, all right, what do I do with these? So I'm going to just now add down the columns, right? This represents the 1s, the 10s, the hundreds, the thousands, and the 10,000s, and I'm going to add down the columns. So 4 plus nothing, just bring down. 6 and 2 is 8. 3 and 5 is also 8. 2 and 1 is 3. And I can bring down this 3 because it has nothing to combine with. And so my final answer, 394 times 86, the product is 33,884. Right? So you can see that that's definitely a lot more complex than just adding down columns and carrying. We have to make sure that we organize our work in the right spots, that when we're multiplying by a place value, that the answers to that start below that place value. Okay, so let's do one that's even a little bit more complex. Okay, so in this case, now we're multiplying a 3-digit number times a 3-digit number. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to say 8 times 0 is 8, okay? And since the 8 is in the 1's position, okay, we're going to say drop the answer, okay, the very first answer, in the 1's position as well, right below it, okay? 8 times 6 is 48, so I'm going to drop the 8 down and pull up the 4. 9 times 8 is 72. 72 plus 4 more is 76, okay? So I just worked with the 8, okay? And so let's move on to our next digit. Okay, our next digit is the 2's, or the 2 in the 10's position. Okay, and so we are going to now do 2 times 0, which is 0. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I said 8 times 0 is 8. I'm looking at that and saying that's wrong. Let me fix that. Okay. This is 8 times 0, which is 0. Okay. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the 2. I'm going to say 2 times 0. 2 times 0 is 0, and if you notice, again, that goes right below where the 2 is. We need to start our number there. 2 times 6 is 12, so I'm going to place a 2 here, okay, and I'm going to carry a 1 to the next spot, which is here. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 1 more would be 19. Okay, so I'm not going to stop now because I actually have another column, right? I need to also do the 4. Okay, so now let's go to the 4. So now we're working here. And so when I get this answer, it's going to go start below the 4. So 4 times 0, still 0. Okay, and again, it's lined up right below the 4. Okay, and 4 times 6 is 24. So I'm going to put down the 4 and carry up a 2. 9 times 4 is 36, plus the 2 that I had up here. So 36 and 2 is 38. Okay, so now because I had 3 digits down here, I also have 3 digits. 3 rows in the addition. So remember, this is addition that's happening here. Okay, so I'm going to go down the columns. 0 comes down. 8 times 0, or 8 plus 0 is 8. 6 plus 2 also 8. 7 and 9 is 16. Okay, 16 and 4 more is 20. So I'm going to put that 0 down here and carry the 2 up. 2 plus 1 plus 8 is 13. So I'm going to put a 3 down and carry a 1. 3 and 1 is 4. Okay, so this big number here, 430,880, that is the answer to these two numbers multiplied together. Okay, so you can see here, organization is extremely important. My 8 answer starts below the 8. My 2 answer multiplied by this starts below the 2, and the 4 answer starts below the 4, so that all of the columns line up where they're supposed to be. Okay, so be careful with that. Okay, so here's another one. And so in this case, we're going to use estimation to find the product. Okay, so we're going to estimate, and it says round to the nearest 10. So I'm showing you this because we have a nice little trick we can use, especially with estimation and zeros, that will make your life a lot easier. So if I were to estimate this number, 296 to the nearest 10, okay, here's my tens digit. I'm going to look to the right, okay, and I see a number that's 5 or larger, which means I'm going to round up. So I'm going to round this up to a 10, which means this is going to round to 300. Okay, so the estimated version of 296 is 300. The estimated version of 44, here's my tens place. Okay, to the right of that is a number that is 4 or lower, so I'm going to round down, okay, and it's going to become 40. So instead of using 296 and 44, I'm going to use 340. So let's set this up, 340. And again, notice what I did when I set this up. This was a tens place. The tens place in this number is right here, and so that's why they are lined up like that. Okay. So now I'm going to multiply these. I'm going to show you the long way just really quick. If I multiplied this times all this stuff, it's 0 times 0, 0 times 0, 0. So if I multiply this 0 by all that stuff, it's really like 0, 0, 0. And then if I do the 4, it's 0, 0, and 12, right? 0, 0, and 12, right? So if you notice, 0, 0, yeah. Okay, that when I go down the column here, I'm really just getting a 12 with a bunch of zeros. And a lot of this work, it feels like a waste of time to just have a bunch of zeros floating around. So here's what we can do that's really nice. If there's ever zeros at the end of a number, like the end of 300 has 2 zeros, okay? So I'm going to just kind of put a box around these 2 zeros, okay? And then the 40 also has a box around, or a 0 at the end of it, so I'm going to put a box around that. And just for a moment, we're going to forget that they exist, okay? So I'm just going to kind of make those disappear for a second, okay? So let me grab my disappearing tool, okay? And we're just going to say for a second, these are not here, okay? And I'm going to look at what's left. And in this case, it looks like 4 and 3. Okay, so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 4 times 3, which we know is just 12. Okay, so I'm going to kind of come over here with this, okay? And I'm going to say 4 times 3 is 12, okay? And then I'm going to look at those zeros. So I kind of did the problem without all that extra stuff, and I'm going to say there are 2 zeros here and a third 0. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take those zeros and put them right on the end of the 12. Okay? So whenever you're multiplying by a number that has zeros at the end of it, we can forget about them, multiply just using the rest of the problem, and then put those zeros on at the end, and you will get an equivalent answer. And I don't think, oh, and so I had the same thing happen here. If you notice really quick with this problem, there's a 0 at the end of it. If we had forgotten about this, kind of like said, let's not do this, and did 428 times 96, which if you notice would have saved us a row of work, okay, I would have gotten the number 43088, and then we could have just said, oh, and I had that 0 up here at the top. Let me just put that on at the end. Okay, so it's kind of a quick way to save yourself a little bit of work whenever you're dealing with zeros at the end of numbers. Okay, so just a nice little trick, especially with estimation, where we're always going to have zeros, a bunch of zeros at the end of a problem. You don't necessarily have to write all that out. Okay, so here's the last problem, and then we are done. So I make a bet with you that I can hit 50 free throws, and I'm going to pay you $6 for every free throw that I miss. Okay? And because I am terrible at basketball, I miss 47 free throws out of the 50. So I want to know how much money you are going to make. And so what this really is when you go back to the definition of what multiplication was, this is repeated addition. Right? We are saying, okay, I missed a free throw, here's $6. I missed another free throw, here's $6. I missed another free throw, here's $6. And so you are repeatedly adding $6 to your total, but you're doing it 47 times. And you don't really want to sit there and go 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 47 times. So this is that situation where you say, wait a second, I'm just repeatedly adding the number 6 over and over and over again. So instead I'm going to use multiplication, and I'm going to say there were 47 free throws, okay, times $6 per free throw, okay, and now I'm just going to do the multiplication. So again, this problem is really just about recognizing that this is not a problem that asks you to do multiplication, but you need to recognize that when you do repeated addition, that you can use multiplication to help you, okay? So 7 times 6 is 42, carry a 4. 6 times 4 is 28. 24 plus 4 more is 28. So that means that in our bet, you made $282 off of my terrible free throw shooting.